Rain hammered the earth like a relentless drumbeat, cloaking the small town in a shroud of grey. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a warning growl from the heavens that seemed to echo through the empty streets. Somewhere in the shadows, a metal gate creaked open, its rusty hinges screaming into the night like a wounded animal. A pair of glowing eyes flickered in the darkness, watching, waiting, as if they knew something the world didn't. Two fates were about to collide, two souls, teetering on the edge of their own stories, but neither could fathom the weight of what was coming. One was a forgotten soul, cast aside by a world that had once hailed him as a savior. The other a spark of light too pure to dim, a child with dreams bigger than the sky. And when they met, the storm would break, not with destruction, but with a roar of destiny that would shake the silence forever, rewriting everything they thought they knew. Buckle up, listener. This isn't just a story. It's a roller coaster of heart-pounding twists, gut-wrenching tears, and a bond so fierce it'll leave you clutching your chest, breathless and aching for more. A washed-up hero, a little girl with a dream that could melt stone, and a danger lurking closer than anyone could imagine, closer than the air they breathe. Will they rise together, a beacon in the chaos, or fall to the shadows that stalk them? Stay with me until the end, because every second of this tale is going to grip you tight and never let go. I'm not here to waste your time. This is raw, real, and unforgettable. Let's dive in. Your heart won't forgive you if you miss this, and trust me, you'll be begging to know what happens next. Sometimes fate doesn't knock gently. It crashes through your life like a tidal wave, pulling you under before you can catch your breath, leaving you gasping and disoriented. This is how it began for Rex and Lily. A collision of two broken worlds stitched together by chance in a moment that felt like the universe holding its breath. He was a warrior once, a shadow of the law, feared by the guilty and revered by the his name had once echoed through precincts and alleyways, a symbol of unshakable resolve. Now he was nothing but a ghost, left to rot in a cage of steel and despair, his glory days reduced to whispers in the wind. She was a 7-year-old dreamer, her heart too big for the cruel world she didn't yet understand, her laughter a melody that could pierce the darkest night. When their paths crossed, it wasn't just a meeting, it was the spark of something unstoppable, a thread of hope woven into the fabric of their lives. A friendship forged in quiet moments, yes, but also the prelude to a battle neither saw coming, a battle that would test the limits of loyalty, courage, and love. Picture this, listener, a hero who's lost everything, staring into the void, his spirit battered and bruised, until a tiny hand reaches out and says, "You're enough." Can you see it? The flicker of disbelief in his eyes, the tremble in her voice. But don't get too comfortable. The past never stays buried, not for long. It festers, it waits, a shadow poised to strike. And danger? It doesn't send a warning, doesn't RSVP. It creeps in silent and swift, a thief in the night. This isn't just about love. It's about survival, about clawing your way back from the brink. Hold on tight. The ride's just beginning and it's going to shake you to your core. The rain fell in a steady, mournful drizzle, painting the town in shades of gloom as if the sky itself were weeping. The shelter's metal gate groaned as it swung open, a sound that sliced through the damp air like a cry for mercy, reverberating off the cracked pavement. Inside, the dogs barked and yipped, their voices a chaotic symphony of hope and desperation, each one pleading for a chance at a new life. But one stood apart, a hulking figure in the corner, silent as a statue, his presence heavy with unspoken stories. His fur was matted, tangled with the grime of neglect, his frame lean from months of barely touching the stale kibble they tossed his way. But his eyes, oh, those eyes carried a weight no animal should bear, deep, haunted pools of amber that seemed to look through you into a past he couldn't escape. This was Rex. Once he'd been a legend, a name spoken with pride and awe. A K-9 officer, the beating heart of the police force, his senses sharper than a blade, his instincts honed to perfection. He'd sniffed out danger in places no human could. Navigate, chased down criminals through mazes of concrete and shadow, saved lives with a courage that defied reason, all beside his partner, Officer Daniels, a man who'd been more than a handler, more than a friend. They were a unit, unbreakable, unstoppable. Until that night. The memory still burned, the crack of gunfire splitting the air, the copper tang of blood soaking the ground, and Daniels crumpling, lifeless, his hand slipping from Rex's fur. Rex had lunged at the shooter, a whirlwind of teeth and fury, but it was too late. The bullet had already stolen everything. The trauma shattered him, splintered his soul into pieces they couldn't put back together. They called it retirement, pinned a medal on his collar and sent him away, but it felt like exile, like betrayal. Now he was here in a cold kennel labeled unadoptable. Too aggressive, they said, too broken, too dangerous. But the truth, his heart was a cavern echoing with loss, a hollow space yearning for something or someone to fill it again. Can you feel it, listener? That ache in his bones, that flicker of a life he can barely remember? He's not just a dog. He's a soldier without a war, a soul teetering on the edge of oblivion, waiting for a reason to fight again. Can you hear the silence screaming around? Him? The weight of his solitude? What happens when a light finds its way into that darkness, when a voice calls him back from the abyss? Let's find out, because this is where it gets real. 7-year-old Lily was a force of nature wrapped in a tiny frame, a whirlwind of determination and dreams. For weeks, she'd begged, pleaded, and negotiated with her parents for a dog, her campaign relentless and fierce. She'd drawn pictures of floppy ears and wagging tails, made promises to feed and walk and love it forever, even offered her allowance, every dime she'd saved in her chipped piggy bank, anything to prove she was ready. Her parents had resisted, their excuses piling up like bricks. Too much work, too little time, maybe next year. But Lily's spirit was a flame that wouldn't flicker, and finally, they relented, worn down by her unyielding hope. The trip to the shelter became her shining victory, a triumph she'd earned with every tear and every plea. As they walked through the rows of kennels, Lily's eyes danced with excitement, her laughter bouncing off the concrete walls like sunlight breaking through clouds, her small hands clapping with uncontainable joy. But then she stopped, dead, in her tracks, as if the world had shifted beneath her feet. There he was, Rex, curled in his corner, staring at nothing, a statue of sorrow in a sea of chaos. His eyes met hers, and something unspoken passed between them, a shiver of recognition, a pull she couldn't explain, like a thread tugging at her heart. She knelt by his cage, her small hands gripping the bars so tight her knuckles whitened, her breath catching in her throat. "Him," she whispered, her voice trembling with a certainty beyond her years. "I want him." The shelter worker hesitated, her brow furrowing with concern, her voice softening as if breaking bad news. "Oh, honey, he's difficult. He's been through a lot, more than you can imagine. He's not like the others. Maybe a puppy would be better, something easier." But Lily shook her head, her gaze unwavering, her chin lifting with a stubbornness that belied her age. "No, he's the one. I know it. I feel it here," she said, pressing a hand to her chest, her eyes shining with a fire no one could extinguish. Her father sighed, exchanging a weary look with her mother, their resolve crumbling under the weight of her conviction. "If it makes her happy," he muttered, his voice trailing off as he shrugged, and her mother nodded, resigned but hopeful. The papers were signed, the ink sealing a pact, none of them fully understood yet. Rex stepped out of that cage like a prisoner tasting freedom after years in chains, his movements slow and deliberate, his head low as if testing the ground beneath him. The air felt different, lighter, sharper, but he didn't trust it. Not yet. Freedom wasn't the end. It was the beginning, a door creaking open to something he couldn't name. Listener, can you hear Lily's heartbeat racing, a wild drum in her chest? Can you sense Rex's confusion, his wariness, the way he holds himself like a soldier stepping onto a battlefield? This isn't just an adoption. It's a promise, a vow written in glances and whispers, and promises, as we'll see, come with a price that's creeping closer with every tick of the clock. At first Rex was a fortress, an enigma wrapped in fur and silence. He moved through the house like a shadow, his steps deliberate, his eyes scanning every corner, every doorway, as if expecting an ambush. He didn't bark, didn't play, didn't even sniff the bowls of food Lily carefully set out, just watched, his gaze distant and guarded. At night, he'd station himself outside Lily's door, a silent sentinel guarding her dreams, his ears twitching at every creak of the house settling. Lily didn't push him, didn't demand his affection like other kids might have. She'd sit nearby, cross-legged on the floor, reading aloud from her favorite books, tales of knights and dragons and faraway lands, her voice soft and steady, a lifeline tossed into his storm. "See, Rex, we're a team now," she'd say, offering a treat he'd sniff but rarely take, her patience a quiet kind of magic. Days turned to weeks, and the cracks began to show, small at first, like sunlight seeping through a boarded window. One afternoon, Lily tossed a ball across the yard, her laughter ringing out, and Rex, almost against his will, chased it, his legs moving before his mind could stop them. A flicker of joy sparked in his eyes, a fleeting ghost of the dog he'd once been, gone as quick as it came. Then came the walks, the games, the quiet moments where Lily's giggles filled the air and Rex's tail gave the faintest wag, a tentative truce with happiness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Lily sat on the porch with Rex at her side, her fingers tracing the scars on his ears. "You're my hero, Rex," she whispered, her voice thick, with a love so pure it could break stone. "My big, brave hero." His ears twitched, catching the words like a lifeline. His chest rumbled with a sound he hadn't made in years, a low, contented huff that vibrated through the stillness. For the first time since that fateful night, since the gunfire and the blood and the loss, Rex felt something stir inside him, a warmth, a tether. Not just loyalty, not just duty, but home, a place he hadn't known he could find again. Listener, are you smiling yet? Can you feel that warmth creeping in, wrapping around you like a blanket? Don't let it fool you. The E. Storm's still brewing, gathering strength in the distance, and it's closer than you think. Closer than they know. Keep listening. Things are about to get wild and you won't see it coming. It started with a shadow, subtle at first, easy to miss. A black van idling at the edge of the street one afternoon, its engine humming like a predator's growl, low and menacing. Lily skipped home from school, her backpack bouncing, her ponytail swinging, oblivious to the eyes tracking her every step, cold and calculating. Inside the van, two men exchanged hushed words, their voices barely audible over the "That's her," one rasped, his tone cold as steel, his fingers tightening on the wheel. "Matches the description perfectly. Right age, right look. She's the one they want." The next day it happened. Fast, brutal, like a thunderclap shattering a quiet morning. Lily was in the backyard, laughing as she tossed a stick for Rex, her voice a bright thread in the crisp air. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the grass, painting the world in a deceptive calm, until it wasn't peaceful anymore. Footsteps crunched on gravel, deliberate and heavy, cutting through the stillness. Two figures emerged from the trees at the edge of the yard, their faces hard, their intent darker than the gathering dusk. One reached for Lily, his hand inches from her arm, his breath quickening with anticipation. And then Rex exploded. A snarl tore from his throat, raw and primal, a sound that shook the air and sent birds scattering from the trees. He launched himself like a missile, a blur of muscle and fury, slamming into the man with bone-crushing force. Teeth sank into flesh, and the intruder screamed, a high, panicked wail as he collapsed under Rex's weight, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle. The second man stumbled back, eyes wide with shock, fumbling for something in his jacket. A weapon, a knife, a gun? But Rex was already on him, a whirlwind of instinct and rage, his jaws snapping inches from the man's throat. Chaos erupted, shouts from Lily, cries from the men, the wail of sirens piercing the distance as neighbors rushed out, phones in hand, voices overlapping in a frantic cacophony. When the police arrived, breathless and armed, the men were sprawled on the ground, whimpering, defeated, their plans shattered in a matter of seconds. Rex stood over Lily, his fur bristling, his breath heaving in ragged bursts, his eyes blazing, with a fire that hadn't burned in years. She clung to his side, her small arms wrapped around his neck, her sobs muffled against his fur. One officer froze mid-step, recognition flashing in his eyes, his jaw dropping. "Holy, Rex? Our Rex? The canine legend?" He knelt, awe and disbelief warring in his voice, his hand hovering as if afraid to touch a myth made real. "Buddy, where have you been? We thought we'd lost you for good." Listener, can you hear the pounding of your own pulse, thundering? In your ears, that was close, too close, a heartbeat away from tragedy. Can you feel the adrenaline still crackling in the air, the weight of what almost was? But this isn't the end, not by a long shot. The best is yet to come, and it's going to hit you like a freight train. Stay with me. I promise you won't regret it. Word spread like wildfire, racing through the town faster than the wind that followed the storm. By morning, the streets buzzed with the tale of the little girl and her fearless protector, whispers turning to shouts, rumors turning to headlines. Newspapers splashed bold letters across their front pages. "Hero dog saves child from kidnappers." Local TV crews descended, cameras flashing as Lily hugged Rex tight, her tears soaking his fur, her voice breaking as she spoke to the microphones thrust in her face. "He's my best friend," she sobbed, burying her face in his neck, "and The crowd melted, their cheers rising like a wave. The police threw a small ceremony in the station parking lot, a makeshift stage under a fluttering flag, pinning a medal on Rex's collar, a gleaming silver star that caught the sunlight, a symbol of the warrior he'd always been, even when the world forgot. But it wasn't the fame that changed him, wasn't the applause or the headlines or the treats strangers slipped him on the street. It was the quiet nights that followed, Lily's head resting on his side as she slept, her breathing slow and steady, her nightmares chased away by his warmth, her parents' grateful smiles over the dinner table, their voices softer now, laced with a reverence they hadn't known they could feel. The way the house felt alive again, humming with a joy that had been missing for too long. Rex had lost everything once, his partner, his purpose, his pride, all torn away in a single, brutal moment. Now, he'd found it all in a little girl who'd seen past his scars, past the labels, past the pain, and called him hers. He wasn't just a dog anymore, not a relic of a past life, not a shadow in a cage. He was a hero reborn, a legend rewritten in the laughter of a child and the steady beat of a heart that had learned to trust again. The town might talk about that day forever, might build statues or write songs, but for Rex, it was simpler. He had a family, a purpose, a home. And for Lily, he was more than a pet. He was her guardian, her knight, her proof that even the broken could be whole again. So, listener, what do you think? Did your heart race, pounding against your ribs like it wanted to break free? Did your eyes sting with tears you didn't expect, your throat tighten with an ache you can't name? This is the power of a bond that defies the odds, a story of loss so deep it hollows you out, love so fierce it fills you back up, and a return that'll echo in your soul long after I stop talking. Rex and Lily, they're not just characters on a page or voices in your ears. They're proof that even in the darkest storms, when the world turns its back and the shadows close in, a hero can rise again, stronger than before. What's your takeaway? What piece of this stays with you, haunts you, lifts you? Tell me. I'm all ears and I can't wait to hear what this stirred in you.